Alright, I know I want this to be an app that has multiple different views. That is, that appears to have multiple different web pages within the one main website. In order to do that with Angular, I'm going to use something called UI Router. So it's another JavaScript library, so I'm going to install it with Bower the way I did Angular. Bower install -- save, and then I know just from having looked it up that it's called Angular-UI-Router. And so now I should see that being added to this Bower components folder right there, and it's also been added to bower.json because I did -- save. So now I'm going to do the first thing, which is to inject it as a dependency, and to do that I'm going to need to include it in here. So it's in the Angular/UI/router folder. Inside that, it's going to be inside src or source. Excuse me, actually it's going to be inside release. Release is if I wanted individual little parts of it, but that would be source is individual little parts of it, but release is where the completed version is. And so in here I'm going to include Angular UI router.min.js. Alright, now that I've done that, I can inject it as a dependency into this new Angular app I've created. It's called UI.router. And what this will enable me to do is to create a couple different sort of mini web pages within my app, or partial views. So this is going to involve some Angular boilerplate in here. I'm going to need to inject state provider, which is a submodule of UI router. I'm going to inject that into my router, and I'm going to say state provider, and then I'll define my first state. So a state is like one of the different web pages or views within your app. And I'm just going to call this one main for right now. I'm not going to do a whole lot with it yet. I just want to make sure that it's working. I'm going to say that it's at the URL of, let's just say /main, and then its template. This is the HTML that I want to appear within that view. I'm just going to say h1, this is working. I'll make that an h2. I already have an h1 on the page. Now that I've done that, the place I want all of these different templates to show up in this main index.html, I'm going to designate that by using the data UI view attribute. And that should be all I need to do in order to see that this is working. So now, if I refresh the page and go to /pound, I see a whole lot of nothing. So that must mean I forgot to do something. Oh, I'm sorry, that's because it's at /main. There we go, and I can see this is working. So I can tell that my template is working. I'm just going to try making another state. I'll call this one test. The only reason I'm doing this, not because I actually plan on using these two different routes here, it's just I like the gratification of knowing that I'm on the right track and I can have multiple views. Alright, so now I think if I go to /test, I should be able to see this is also working, and there it is right there. Alright, so now I have a very basic router set up. There are a couple other things I'm going to do with this router. Namely, I would like it so I don't have to do this /pound thing, because that gets pretty annoying. So I'm going to use something built into UI router called location provider. And it has HTML5 mode, which is basically a way of not having to type in that pound. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure how it works, but somehow it does. One thing you need to remember to do when you do this is, see this no base error. That's because whenever you use this location provider HTML5 mode, you need to use this base tag and put that in the head of your main index.html. And now that seems to be working. This base tag, outside of Angular, what it does is it says where all relative URLs should be based off of. So if I had this being /mypath, and then I had a link in here, like ahref/some link, this base tag would tell it, okay, when someone tries to go to /some link, actually go to /mypath/some link. So that's the usual intention of this base tag, but Angular does it a little bit differently. All right, so I want the main page of my app to not be at /main. I just want it to be at plain old /. So if everything's set up appropriately, now I should be able to refresh this page and see if this is working, and I do. So that's pretty good. The last step is that if I type in /test on here, I'm going to get this error. And that's because Angular only works on the front end. Express in the back end, it doesn't know that I want this /test to still actually be going to this index.html. My Express app thinks that there's some whole other view, there's some whole other route that should be living at /test. Putting that another way, it expects me to have /test somewhere in here, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not actually going to have that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this. Whenever anyone tries to go to any link, it should show them this sendFile /public index.html. Now, if I refresh this page, I see this is also working. So far, so good. And if I go to /test, same thing. Every single time, it's redirecting to that main index.html page. The very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in this URL router provider. And I'm going to use this to make it so that if someone tries to go to a route for which I haven't defined anything in Angular, it should redirect them to something else. So here I'm going to do URL router provider dot otherwise /. It's called otherwise because it's saying if someone tries to go something that is not this state right here and not this state, it should take them to /. If I change this to google.com, check out what happens if I try to go to /mypath. I haven't defined a state for my path, so now when I go there, it tries to redirect me to google.com. I don't actually want it to redirect me to google.com. I want it to just take me to /. So now if I try to go to /mypath, it's going to redirect me to plain old /. So this is everything I'm going to do for my Angular router, which is now set up all nicely. So this is plenty enough for another commit. Set up basic Angular router, and I'll push that up.